All right, it is 7 o'clock, and I will call our Pewaukee School Board meeting to order for Monday, April 28th. First, I will start with roll call. Larry?
Here.
Ashley?
Here.
Matt?
Here.
Mary?
Here.
Travis?
Here.
And Stacy will be coming later. Was the meeting properly noticed?
Meeting was properly noticed.
Thank you. Can I get someone to give me a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oppose.
We'll stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, tonight we are happy to welcome Horizon Elementary School. We have Christy Johnson, we have Emily, Colleen, and various students with us tonight. So I'll ask you all to come up and get started. They all look so pretty.
Talk right into the mic here. So if you want to kick us off, and I've got
I
the clicker.
absolutely will. Thank you very much for having us. My name is Emily Jazanowski, and I'm a third grade teacher at Horizon. We are introducing a very new fun project at the school, and it's called the Horizon Hammock Garden. Let me switch to the slide. So first, to explain the project, we're going to talk about who, what, when, where, and why. We can't go in this order, though, because we need to talk about what is a hammock garden. So a hammock garden is an outdoor learning space for students to be a part of nature while enjoying their love for learning. There's going to be 25 hammocks or more, depending on the class size, and they'll be attached to wooden posts for the entire class to swing and enjoy their reading experience outside. It's a great way to make our school unique and creatively enhance the learning experience at Horizon. Here's a few photos for inspiration. So you can see some Pewaukee red shade sails to block out some sun. And Mrs. Rooney's going to speak about design elements.
So at Horizon, when we launched this with students, we started in February, and we had the students start to think a little bit about how this hammock garden could look. So we had to think a little bit about the design of the hammocks, we had to think a little bit about possible storage and shade, location of the hammocks, and had the kids work in all of their classes to come up with some different designs, thinking about what would be the most efficient way that they could arrange the hammocks in that space, and also in a very non-costly kind of a way, right? So the students came down to Makerspace or in their classrooms, and they worked on designing different layouts as they had conversations with each other. We also talked a little bit about having spaces that would be accessible to students that might have mobility issues. And then we started talking a little bit more about some other possibilities, making sure that we might have something like a little library that's there, or even a rock garden. So as we move into the month of May, all of the students at Horizon are going to be given the opportunity to have a rock and to do some designs that are going to be a part of the aesthetics of the hammock garden as well. And so who is involved? Obviously, all of our Horizon students are going to be involved in this planning process. We have high school students that were over today that were helping to plot out where the posts are going to go for the hammock gardens. And then families also have been a huge part of this process. They have been contributing books and hammocks as well as monetary donations. And a big thanks to the Pewaukee PTO also that graciously gifted us $1,000 from a Pewaukee grant this year. And then of course our community members have also been very helpful and supportive. Everything from We Energies that has been helping us, as well as CG Schmidt. So we are very lucky to have so many people involved.
So we have some students that are here that are going to explain their involvement with the project, from designing, planning, and solving math problems related to the real life materials and budget, as well as reflecting with writing. So first up is Arlo.
Horizon students all took a turn trying out possible designs for the space. One challenge we faced was to use fewer posts to allow more traffic flow. We also wanted to include a handicap accessible hammock so that the hammock garden is universally designed for learning. You can be used by all and can be used by all. You can see that the elements from our early designs have made their way to the final project. The handicap accessible swing is attached to the whole structure so that all students can hang together.
Next up is Natick, a third grader.
I love math, and the planning phase of the hammock garden is full of numbers, calculations, and measurements. As you can imagine, I was very excited to know that we had a chance to use our math skills to problem solve some real-life scenarios. Each grade level worked to solve actual math problems during the hammock garden's material and price list. We found solutions to problems ranging from the height of the hammock hooks, calculating the area for pressing out wood chips, and multiplying the total bags of concrete by their cost to help build the budget for this project. As a third grade, I love challenging my thinking by giving the fourth and fifth grade math problems a try as well.
Our words have power. Writing is a powerful tool that can be used to make big things happen, like the hammock garden. Students used writing to persuade local businesses to consider donating time and materials.
Students also wrote letters of gratitude to the PTO for their donation, and even as a way to envision and reflect about the outdoor learning space.
Our fourth grade classes used a writing choice board and used our creativity to create poems about the hammock garden. We'd love to share them with you.
Step in really quickly. Just want to explain that the packets you have here have a lot of the student involvement pieces in there, so feel free to flip through. And the poems that the girls are about to read that they wrote themselves are also included in those packets. Enjoy.
Sensory poem by Isa. I see my awesome book. I hear birds chirping. I feel great. I smell greenery. I taste the knowledge of my book.
Hammock. Helpful, amusing, mindful, magical, outstanding, comfy knowledge. Garden. Great, amazing, radical, delightful, enrichment, nice. By Lily.
Horizon Hammock Garden. I see the words I read. I hear the pages of my book flip. I feel the wind pass me. I smell the fresh air. I taste the knowledge. By Penelope Reistad.
Thank you so much, students, for joining and sharing. The next step is, when will this project begin? This has really been a year-long design and planning process that the students have been involved with, the staff has been involved with, community members, and as you heard today, the high school construction class as well. So that's been really exciting. I'm proud to announce that last week we broke ground on this project, and Friday they came to start pulling the ground back with our connection with C.G. Schmidt. And then today the high schoolers took their part in starting to measure for where the placements will be dug for all of the posts. We Energies will be coming to donate their telephone poles and install them for us as well, which is really great. Where will the hammock garden be? The school is shaped like the letter E, so the northmost courtyard has been pretty underutilized, so we're going to be placing it there between the 4th and 5th grade hallways. And then the last slide is a little mock-up that just shows a little example of what it might look like. As you can see, a side view of the clusters, there'll be hammocks underneath, some tapered shade sails. There'll be 3 clusters of those throughout the space.
So why is this important? We've done a lot of thinking about how students will benefit from this rich sensory environment that's going to enhance their cognitive, physical, and emotional experience. So really being able to be outside, doing some reading, collaborating, cooperating, Lots of different things that seamlessly align with our graduate profile. So we've done a lot of work in thinking about how this hammock garden can create and can connect directly to the items from our graduate profile. A couple of the things that we've done directly connected include for that connect piece, we've had lots and lots of community connections, and I've highlighted some of those for you below. Mrs. Jazanowski also mentioned several of them, all the way from We Energies, who donated all of the posts, C.G. Schmidt, who donated the labor for pulling back the ground for us, Wellensteins and Sons, which is going to help to even out some of the ground and the posts. We've had some landscape companies that have donated rocks and different things along those lines. Lots of connections with Pewaukee High School, as have been mentioned, with their building classes. Pewaukee PTO, which has helped to fundraise through their grant program. And then Pewaukee Families. At our Horizon Family Game Night, we did a trivia game where families were able to contribute $5 to participate in the trivia, and all the proceeds went directly towards our hammock garden. From that create, we did the Makerspace Challenge that Mrs. Rooney mentioned, where all of our students engaged with thinking about how to make this design the most effective. Contribute, we are in the process of purchasing rocks, and there will be a rock garden where every student in Horizon will paint a rock that will become part of our Horizon Rock Garden. And then from that care lens, students have thought a lot about accessibility, as you heard them mention, thinking about creating that handicapped accessible hammock that students will be able to engage with. So a huge thank you to all of our students who are here. An additional thank you to Mrs. Rooney, who has helped greatly with this project. But ultimately, the bulk of this has really come from Mrs. Jazanowski. So I want to give a huge shout out to her. She has put in an incredible amount of time into this project. And so it's really been exciting to see her passion shine through for this. So thank you for the opportunity for us to share this with you. And let us know if you have any questions.
So if I come and volunteer to help with readers next year, can I check out one of those hammocks?
Yes, there will be lots of opportunities to engage with those hammocks.
Awesome. Any other questions?
This is just another great example of the K-12 environment and the campus environment. I think back about 4 or 5 years ago when the construction classes at the high school also developed a project to put a gazebo in the courtyard that is used by all the students at Pewaukee Lake Elementary. So another great way to give back and contribute to the whole campus environment.
Thank you for putting your time into this. This seems like a really, really great project.
Thank you very much for having us. We're really excited. This is going to be a big week for the project because it's really happening now. So it'll be fun to check out. Thank you.
Thank you so much for presenting. You guys are so professional. Thank you so much. All right. Next, we'll move on to salutes and recognitions. Does anybody on the board have anything they want to start out with? Okay, admin.
I have two for tonight. First of all, our global business students from the mini business competition at Carroll College. We had first place and second place teams in the competition that was over there. I can get Tammy the names of the student participants. And then also our ProStart students, 5 of them, who went with Mr. DeMars to the Taste of the Draft and created and served food to a lot of the participants in that event. So that was a big success.
Awesome.
One, potentially two. I think this was on the school Facebook page. Ella Opie is being recognized as a Wisconsin student athlete by the WIAA. So I guess there's 4 or 32 altogether around the state, but it's every division. So
I think you forgot the word academic, right? It's an
Right,
academic
yeah,
award
right,
for an athlete.
academic, WIA,
Yeah.
academic scholar, so pretty cool. So not very often in Pewaukee, so good for her.
Awesome.
I have one as well. Lauren Weisky, who is a math teacher and interventionist at both the middle school and the high school, was one of 100 teachers in the state of Wisconsin recognized for the Cole Award. So it's a pretty prestigious honor for an educator. She gets a $6,000 award, and then the school gets the $6,000 award as well. So it's a great recognition for Lauren.
Absolutely. Congratulations to her. Anyone else have anything?
Well, I have one more. This is for, last week was Administrative Assistance Day, so I want to recognize Tammy over there. And then, and then also Sandy Krukowski at the district office. They've both put in a tremendous amount of time to make sure that things stay afloat, and they do so with a smile, which is excellent.
Thank you, Tammy and Sandy. Thank you. All right, moving right along. Tammy, any comments from citizens?
No comments from citizens.
Okay. Next, consent agenda. We have minutes from previous meetings, both the regular meeting and business affairs. No correspondence or gifts at this time. So can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
Next, moving on to old business. We need to consider and possibly approve the CTE curriculum revisions. Anthony, I'm going to give that to you.
Yeah, we had presented at our last meeting on the CTE curriculum revisions. There was opportunity for community members and board members to review that curriculum. I did not receive any questions regarding the CTE curriculum.
Does anybody have any questions at this time?
The CTE curriculum is
Career and technical education.
for what grades?
It was presented grades 6 through 12.
Is there a dollar amount with that?
Excuse me? There is a dollar amount. It's the dollar amount has not changed since the presentation, which for CTE was $47,987.57.
What are we getting for that?
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, Anthony. What are we getting for the $47,000?
I don't have the itemized list in front of me, but that is all of the materials and everything we need to deliver the curriculum for all of those courses. And that is something I can easily get.
To review that, did one have to make an appointment with you and go into your office?
Yeah, it could be a phone conversation as well. But if you wanted to review the curriculum, that's posted on our online website as a draft curriculum currently, and that's available to board members and to the public as well.
Are the resources available that you're anticipating to purchase available for that same look?
We could make them available, yes.
Could we do that with all the stuff we're buying?
Some of it is material-based, but if there were a textbook or a curricular resource, the answer to that question would be yes.
I'm kind of thinking we should be doing that on a regular basis. I think did we not have difficulty with the purchase of, what was the title of the book that we pulled from the shelves?
You're talking about a library book versus
Yeah.
a curriculum book?
Right.
What was the title?
Heartstoppers, I believe, but that was a library book. That wasn't curriculum.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
not.
This is curriculum.
Totally different process for approval.
I think if we want to be transparent, we should be putting this stuff online so people can see what it says. Because I think, go ahead, Anthony.
And that is why it was, so the board received the materials 2 weeks ahead of time prior to the last meeting. All of those were presented here at this meeting. At that point in time, it was communicated that there was a 2-week window, an opportunity for both community members and board members to review any curricular materials. I didn't have any questions, nor did I have any questions or requests from community members either.
Right, so my question goes back to, isn't that the arrangement that you offered to the board where we would make an appointment with you? I do remember those words.
If you wanted
To go in and see it in your office was the...
Correct. The curriculum outlines were posted online, available to everyone, and the physical resources were available to come review in my office. That's correct.
Okay, I don't think the curriculum outline is particularly useful to the public. I think we're not having trouble so much with that as we are with the actual resources. So the resources are not available to the public to see prior to our purchase?
The public is welcome to go into
Correct.
Anthony and see them as well.
And whether it be during a curricular revision or renewal like this, or at any point in time, anyone is welcome to come and review.
In your office by appointment?
Correct.
Okay. Why can't we break that open a little bit more so that people can look at it online?
Well, some of it is actual physical, here it is.
Physical books.
Physical books. And then there are also some that are online that would require logins. And we pay for those, per login. But even with that, we probably would be able to find a way to make that available to whoever wanted to review it.
I think when we had the discussion about the series that had come into the library, it doesn't matter where it's coming from. It's going to be seen by children, whether it's curriculum or library. And teachers use library resources for their curriculum. So that's kind of a moot point.
I would say,
But, well, I haven't...
from a curricular delivery standpoint and a curricular resource standpoint, the teachers do not use any library materials. Now, if there are classes where students are reading choice texts, then they would be getting those from the library. But I do know that the library issue specifically led to a policy revision on the part of the board.
I think that we're not using the community as much as we could. The big example is what they did with the federal budget. Now, in our lifetime, and most recently in the last 5 years, they were able to put that online, and a lot of people who are just interested in looking at it looked at detail. We're not using that ability of our community to do that at all. So something like you caught 2 months ago or 4 months ago, whenever it was, why wouldn't we allow the public to constantly, always see what we're purchasing and what's in those resources when we can do that?
So I can speak to the curriculum, because that's what's on the agenda. But as I stated before, anytime they would like to view that, if it is something that we can't just have, an online access for, people are always welcome to come and review.
And Mary, Anthony's predecessor, Danielle, put all of the curriculums online for the first time in history. So right now, any parent can go online and look at a curriculum that their child is involved in. That's been in the last 5 years. So we are using we are being transparent and having it available to anyone who wants to go look. Yes, physical items, they need to come in and figure out how best to do that, and it takes a little work, but I don't know how else you can think that should be done.
Well, we had the series that was not appropriate, and what was said to us as a board was that sometimes that happens because it's recommended by I think it was the American Library Association, and then the people who purchased it didn't look at it closely. I'm thinking we could do a whole lot better in vetting that, unless you folks think that we're not having any issues with any of the curriculum.
And I feel like the board took action in revising the library media selection policy to do just that.
It's a much more in-depth process.
It is.
It is absurd to think that in 2025, we have to come up with a policy to prevent that from coming in the first place.
We had a policy, but the new policy is
It's common sense. It should never have been here in the first place. And
Mary, and nobody argues that with you, and there is a stronger policy in place now to try and prevent that from happening.
I think everyone differs in their ideals about what might be appropriate or not appropriate, which is why we beefed up the policy to set clear guidelines on what we were willing to accept versus not. So there is no question.
Okay, I'm going to move on because now you're entering into a topic on the library book policy, which is not on our agenda. So that part of the conversation is over, and I will move to approve the CTE curriculum revisions as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oppose.
Right, and next is a consideration and possible approval of the K-3 literacy curriculum revisions.
Yep, so similar to the CTE curriculum revision process that was presented, opportunity for people to view. The budgeted cost for that was $66,426.70. Received no questions from board members, no requests from community members to come in and review anything physical that was not available online.
Is it the administration's position that without spending $66,000, we cannot become compliant with Act 20?
I believe that question was posed when it was presented, and at that point in time, I believe I communicated that it was our recommendation that the dollars that we were spending on that was for the best possible curriculum for our students, in addition to being in alignment with Act 20 requirements.
Right, if you said that before and you're saying it again, it doesn't answer the question one bit. My question is, without spending $66,000, is it your position that we cannot become aligned with Act 20?
I would say that at this point in time, I would say yes. We have processes in place built for curriculum revision and adoption, and to start from scratch, square one, that would be my position, yes.
To start from scratch, square one? So if I query Representative Nalen and our senator on the absolute necessity of a school board to spend $1 to become compliant with Act 20, is it your position that they would say yes?
Well, and I can't speak for them, but what I can say, whether we were making this change to be in alignment with the Act 20 law or not, our process from a continuous improvement standpoint is to continually review our curriculum on a regular basis, much like the CTE curriculum that we just presented. And generally speaking, if there is a new adoption of resources, there is a cost that comes with that.
This is reading material. I was under the impression that we had to do this because of Act 20.
It moved the process, the curriculum renewal process up. The board was made aware of the piloting of 2 curriculums last year, which ultimately led to this decision here.
What is so new about reading literacy that you have to spend $66,000?
If you were understood Act 20, there were materials.
I'm sorry, the question was for Anthony.
Yeah, and I can share that. We vetted not only curriculums that were recommended by the DPI, but also curricular resources that would continue to put us in alignment with the new requirements, which were reviewed the last time we were here. And this is what we thought was the best approach. So that is why it's being presented tonight.
I know, but 5 years ago, we had reading materials for reading proficiency. What is it about those materials that is no longer anywhere sufficient for us to do reading proficiency 5 years later that we need to spend another $66,000? This is just reading proficiency.
They are not approved
excuse me,
by Act
my
20.
question is addressed to it.
Mayor, you keep asking the same question and he's giving you the same answer. Act 20 explicitly banned us from using some of the materials we used to use. We need to buy new materials. Are you advocating for our teachers not being given curriculum materials?
Anthony, my question, so if what that board member was saying is true, then your answer to the question about the representatives and the state senator should be an absolute yes. They would say that. They would say we cannot become in compliance without spending $66,000 more on reading literacy for K through 3.
I can't,
Would that be-
I can't speak to what the representatives would or wouldn't say.
And I can't imagine they would give a specific dollar amount and say $67,000 would be required to get new curriculum.
Which they can't.
And as I presented the last time, when we looked at the 2 piloted curriculums, and this would not drive our decision-making solely, we want to have a curriculum that best supports learning for our students. And the curricular resource that we did end up presenting here to the board was probably about $80,000 cheaper than the second option that we piloted.
I understand all that, Anthony. My question is, it's reading. 5 years ago, you told the board the same thing. We bought a different product.
I did not tell the board
I'm
that 5
speaking
years
as
ago.
you, as the administration. Now we're back here, and again, we're doing reading literacy, and you need to spend another $66,000. And I was just wondering if you had a reason why, and perhaps the board member was correct in saying that you are repeating your answers, so I'm not going to get an answer, so thank you very much.
I would just like to say, Mary, that clearly you are very passionate about curriculum. And so I'm really going to implore you that as these curriculum things come up for a vote, please take the time to come in and sit down with Anthony. I've done it, others have. He is so welcoming. He will spend all the time you need to go through those materials and explain it explicitly and answer any questions you have. I just really implore you that because you are so passionate about this, please take the time to sit down with Anthony and discuss the concerns that you have.
Thank you, Madam President. I beg to differ. I have spoken to Anthony. I've gotten responses on a few things, CLEP, to include CLEP and that. I do not find that to be the case. I do not find it plausible that we need to be spending $66,000 additional on something so simple and something we've done for 150 years as reading proficiency. Thank you.
I move to approve the K-3 curriculum revisions as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oppose.
All right, moving on to new business. We have both of our SROs here tonight, and I just want to start by saying thank you, because you've got us through some really challenging times in the last month here. But I'd love to have you gals come up and just give us your school resource officer report.
Good evening. So I know I'm probably a new face for some of you. My name's Larissa Hildenbrand. I started the beginning of this school year in September. So I've been with the village for 4 years, and I'm really enjoying my time here so far. So we'll just get into it right away. Oh, you can look right there. Me too.
Oh, that's nice. The writing up there's a little tiny for me. So just a little bit about me. My name is Julie Budenhagen. I've been a police officer for 20 years, up here at the school district for 7. I have an associate's degree from Lakeshore Technical College. I actually went for paralegal studies before going to the police academy in 2004. I've been at the Pewaukee Police Department since then. Some of my specialties, some of the things I really enjoy doing is our Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, forensic interviewing of children. So anytime a child is a victim of a crime or a witness, we use forensic interviewing. So we can interview those children in a child-friendly environment in an open-ended way so we get their narrative. I've also been an evidence technician, and I've worked on white-collar crimes and really just sensitive crimes in general, and then also as a school resource officer.
So as I mentioned earlier, I've been with the Village of Pewaukee for 4 years now. Started here in September. I earned my bachelor's degree in Spanish and criminal justice from UW Oshkosh, and then I went to the police academy shortly after in 2021. Some of my special assignments include Internet Crimes Against Children, obviously school resource officer, and I'm also a community liaison officer, so I handle special events in the community, National Night Out, events at the lakefront, all of those fun little events that happen along the way. So just to kind of get into our role as a school resource officer, we are a member of the safety committee, so we attend the meetings along with admin and everyone else. We also are crossing guard coordinators, so we are in charge of, or a part of hiring crossing guards and ensuring that they are, doing their duties. We're essential members of the behavioral safety assessment team for students who struggle with mental health. Guest speakers in classroom, Julie does life skills, currently in the thick of it. We're a liaison for complaints regarding student driving concerns in the community, along with parking, especially on Lake Street. And then we are also medical alert first responders.
Some of the special events that we help with or attend is a lot of the dances. So homecoming, graduation is a huge one. Football games, police escorts for sports. So when sport teams go to state, we have the opportunity to take them usually to I-94 or 164. It's probably one of our favorite things to do. And then when they win, then we get to have a parade when they come back. Let's see, Spring Sing is also one of our favorite events in the springtime for Pewaukee Lake Elementary. And again, dances. Prom is not in our jurisdiction, but we do help with kind of the security when students first arrive here for the festivities for prom. Career Day, reality store, fire drills, and active threat drills, as well as weather. Attend safety committee meetings. We often work with John Stangler if there are safety concerns or if there's a certain, if we see something that we think needs to be changed or updated. Board meetings, and then canine searches of the school.
So I'll just quickly touch on National Night Out. As I mentioned earlier, I do help organize this along with another officer at our department. This year was the first year that we've ever held it here at the school district, so we worked hand in hand with John Stangler to kind of make this happen. It was the largest turnout we've had in all the years that we've been doing it. So the cooperation with the school and the coordination with, all of the student volunteers that helped and all the clubs. So it was a huge success. It's meant to bridge the gap between police and community members. It's meant to be totally free for the community. They just get to come and explore. We have, squad cars. We had the Black Hawk helicopter, Flight for Life this year. So we have a bunch of police equipment, Army equipment, lots of fun stuff for the kids to come do. Meant to form those lasting relationships with juveniles, and having it at the school also helped with that, to get that record turnout. This year we are holding it on Wednesday, August 6th, 2025, so mark your calendars. With the success that we had last year, we're hoping for a similar turnout, and we're really excited to put it on again. So as we get into our priorities, our first priority obviously is to maintain a safe and secure campus for all students and staff. At the same time, we aim to build relationships with those students and staff members. We educate ourselves on critical after-incident reports, whether that's from events that might have happened here at our school or, neighboring communities, other states, just to kind of build our own responses. Responding and being a part of the support team for students with heightened mental health states or crises. Continuing to combat the use of vaping devices, many that include THC in our schools. Continuing to educate students and parents on the increase in sextortion. So as ICAC members, that's one thing that Julie and I have a pretty good knowledge on. And our teens and younger are being targeted a lot more often nowadays. We did have Katie McPherson come this year for a couple times, I believe it was, to give her presentation on it. So that's one way that we're kind of trying to educate on sextortion. We continue to educate students and support them regarding cyberbullying, and continuing to network with local SROs on current trends and safety concerns. And then we do have our Speak Up, Speak Out, and Crime Stoppers, which are anonymous tip lines. So we'll often get SUSO tips throughout our weeks with things that range from vape concerns to sextortion concerns.
So our goals, continuing on, to educate students and parents on internet safety, sextortion, cyberbullying, and online predator cases. I think we could give this presentation monthly to parents and students, and unfortunately we still have these cases, and I think it's so important. This is something that we hold very dear to our hearts. We see that kids are not just being bullied at school anymore. They're being bullied 24/7 because it really trickles on to the internet and social media. So we are going to keep on fighting this, and hopefully some way we will have less reports and more students speaking up and sticking up for other students. We want to continue to build those positive relationships with students and every opportunity that we can. Strive to provide the environment where students and staff feel safe and conducive to learning. Our door is always open, so if there's any safety concerns that students or staff have, we're happy to have them down or meet with them and talk about options and planning. Attend trainings on school safety, school threats, our school safety conference, ICAC, and SRO conferences. We're going to talk here shortly about one of the programs that we learned about at the WSCA, or Wisconsin School Safety Conference. I think it'd be a really great addition to some of the clubs and programs that we have here.
So one of the programs that we learned about at our recent school safety conference was a club that's kind of originated, or the speakers were from Pewaukee High School. So they have a SAVE club, and it's for students against violence everywhere. And it's a nationwide club, but they kind of have their own thing going on there. But it was really moving for us, and they had a lot of good ideas that we'd kind of like to implement here. So we're working with administration to hopefully start implementing this program at the high school and at ASA. So essentially it's a student-led group that brings unity among staff, students, and community. They have monthly activities that promote a positive school community. So whether that be football games, they have events where at halftime the two schools will come together and run on the field with banners for students against violence everywhere. They'll have these banners signed by all of the students throughout the week or the month to pledge against violence in schools. So it's really kind of brought their community together, their school community together. They'll do dances at the halftime show with both schools. They have a hot chocolate event where they'll just hand out hot chocolate to the kids just to kind of promote, friendliness among everyone. They do scavenger hunts for See Something, Say Something, where they'll have rewards that you can turn in. And then one of the big ones was No Cell Phone Fridays. So they were rewarded for if they were seen without a cell phone in the hallways, and that eventually turned into a no cell phone policy at the school in general, which is something that I know Julie and I would love to have here. I know it'll make our jobs a lot easier, but it's one way that they kind of slowly implemented it, and they spoke on how a lot of kids protested it at first, because what kid isn't going to protest not having their cell phone, but eventually they just kind of adopted it, and it has worked out really well for them. They don't have any big incidents with kids having their cell phones on them. So it's really a club that we kind of wanted to slowly kind of introduce here, see how it works. They have spoken on how it really has kind of built a really good community within the school and within the kids, and kids aren't afraid to speak out if something's going on, and they know they have these connections with trusted adults, with their fellow students. So it's really kind of been, it was a really awesome presentation to go to, and just to see and kind of hopefully move it here as well.
All right, we have another page of goals. Some more goals are to attend trainings on juvenile mental health. Again, it's a good reminder for us and a refresher always that mental health changes, and that we have to have that trauma-informed care approach when it comes to some of our students. We're really hoping to improve our student drop-off procedures and student and staff parking. So staff parking and student parking is a huge complaint every single year because we have very limited spots available. So we're looking to possibly assign every single staff member a parking spot and really getting better signage. During our last PD day here, Larissa and I went to other school campuses and just took pictures of signs and kind of got more ideas on how we can make it more clear so we don't have visitors parking in student spots. They pay for their spots. And also we have some part-time staff or staff that comes in a little bit later that doesn't have a spot because we have visitors parking in staff spots. So we're hoping to be able to fix that problem, or at least lead in that direction. We did utilize our school district for rescue task force training this past year, and it is something that we want to continue to do. We're very lucky and fortunate that we have this campus that we can train on when school's not in session, as well as WCTC. So we want to utilize that as much as we can to get our officers, as well as our fire department and local law enforcement agencies that would be responding up if there were to be a mass incident. And then work to improve our anti-bullying by proposing a new anti-bullying ordinance. So we've had a few cyberbullying cases over the last few years that I've been here. Again, this is very near and dear to me because I know this really affects our students and their mental health when something happens. It might not always be school-based, but it's something where they're coming in the next day and being, upset or bothered by something. So we're looking to propose an anti-bullying ordinance so that we can handle that kind of in an immediate fashion for that student, and also hold parents accountable when it happens on more than one occasion. So that's still in the works, but we're hoping to get that taken care of this summer. Okay, I'll just talk about our rescue task force training real quickly. We did this in August of this year. We utilize Horizon Elementary. In previous years, we've hosted it here at the high school. It just gives us an idea of the layout of those schools. This block of training was only 4 hours, but we're really looking forward to working with our area law enforcement agencies again. So Shaniqua, Delafield, Heartland, I thought we had another agency, I can't recall, but we were all working together to work through scenarios in our school after a PowerPoint presentation. So we worked through active threats as well as a rescue task force. For those of you that haven't heard of rescue task force, it's essentially our procedure that in the past we would wait for the scene to be completely clear, the suspect is either down or arrested. Now we can come into what we call warm zones, where there still may be an active situation in a part of the school, but we can get officers and fire department personnel in there to tend to those wounded and evac them in a quicker fashion so that we're saving more lives. So it's a really important training that we do, and again, to utilize our school district is really, really helpful for us to be able to work with our layouts and our neighboring agencies.
So just for kind of an overview of the calls for service that we had in 2024, so you can see that the high school kind of holds a majority of them. That's because they're anywhere from parking complaints to vaping, vapes being confiscated. And then we have Asa Clark with 54, Horizon and Pewaukee with around 24, 22. So like I said, the high school just makes up a majority of that because they take in more parking complaints and all that fun stuff. And then here we just have a kind of a breakdown of the high school calls for service. So you can see, it's kind of hard to see, but a large majority of them is going to be extra patrols. So officers who are working third shift will come up here and they'll pull an extra patrol, just, driving around the area, making sure there's no one hanging out that shouldn't be here, making sure everything looks good. So that's where a large majority of those calls come from. And then we have other calls for service, whether that be like a special event where we're up here, or that actually has its own category, but other calls for service would be anything that kind of doesn't fit in these other ones, maybe small calls, anything along those lines. And then we have juvenile problems, disorderly conducts, and drugs kind of take a tie there for third place, and then parking complaints are also in there. All right, do we have any questions or anything that we covered?
Yeah, I do. It sounds like maybe one of the issues that is kind of blown up a little bit this year is this sextortion. And I'm wondering if you could just take a moment and just talk through what that is and how it affects our students here at the school.
Sure. So our first sextortion case we had was in 2020, and it was a middle school student, unfortunately, who was being sextorted. So it started with a conversation over Instagram. Unfortunately, she had her profile public, and somebody had reached out to her, and it seemed very friendly. It was another person who said that they were 11 years old. Our student was 13. This happened outside of school. And the 11-year-old just really commented and said, "Oh, I really like your profile. It's really cute." it really snowballed, and sextortion snowballs very quickly. These aren't cases where it takes weeks for images to be exchanged. It's usually within a few hours. So that case was definitely unique compared to what we're seeing now. Ultimately, that girl, who is an adult, said that her dad wanted to meet our student. So now we have a second profile coming in. They're switching from Instagram to Google Chat, and this dad asked for some images. And in order to get images, he sent one to make her feel more comfortable. And that was an image of a young girl, and it would be considered child pornography. Our student was obviously very afraid, and he said, if you don't send me nude photos, I am gonna tell your family, and I'm gonna come and kill you. So there were some really serious threats for a 13-year-old. Again, this was our first case. We don't see him quite like that right now, but he kept on pushing for her to send images. Once those images were sent, thankfully, she told a parent, and they came in to report it. What happened, along with those, with him threatening her, he had actually said, I can see your cousin, I can see her name, she lives in this area of Wisconsin, and I'm gonna send her your pictures, and then I'm gonna go after her. So if you're thinking in the headspace of a 13-year-old girl who has never been exposed to anything like this, she was deathly afraid that he was gonna hurt her or her family, so she felt obligated to send these images out. In our second case I'm going to talk about, male and females are very different. Usually females are targeted because these suspects want more images. And what they do with those female images is they target the males. So for a male student, what they're looking for, I shouldn't say student, for a male victim, they're looking for money. So our male student was 15 years old. Again, this is outside of school. He was on, I believe this started over Instagram as well, and somebody had sent him a message, again, open profile. It was a direct message saying, hey, how are you? It started off very small. Within, I think, 2 hours, she sent an image. The image was of a different victim, but he didn't know that. He just thought, okay, this young teenager is sending me an image of herself. It's okay for me to send one back, which he did. As soon as he did that, they extorted him for money, and he ended up sending $1,100 via different apps. We were notified by his parents because his parents got the notification that he only had $100 left in his account. So this was money he was saving for college. So men or teen boys are being targeted for money. Girls are being targeted for more images. And we give these talks. We had the FBI come with us to talk to ASA, to talk to our students here at the high school, to do the parent presentations, and unfortunately we're still seeing it. I think part of it is that our teens are being desensitized based on all the content they're seeing on the internet and on social media. But it's also the fact that when they get an image from somebody, they're, I don't want to say common sense, but they're not thinking really appropriately, and they're just making an impulsive decision, and by then it's too late. So that's kind of extortion or sextortion in a nutshell, but unfortunately we're still seeing it. We've seen students across the United States commit suicide almost immediately because they're being threatened. If they do not send images, their parents are going to be notified. We had our male student was actually told, I'm going to let Mr. Stiff know. They must have come up with like a Gmail address, but they actually sent like an email address, and if you're already in a panic and in shock by this whole situation, you're going to believe that they are going to send that to your principal. So it's an important thing that we talk to our students about, and also let them know if this does happen, what you should do, because I don't think we say it enough. We always say, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And then it happens, and then we kind of have this freak out moment where they're thinking their option's suicide, or they don't know what to do. So again, that's kind of it. Do you have anything to add to that? It's horrible. I don't think in 2020 we realized when we had that first case that was the start of it. I didn't even put 2 and 2 together until we got a second case, which I think was in 2022. So,
after the programs that we held this school year, did you feel they were effective? Did you feel like students were paying attention, or is it just?
I think sometimes they are. So I teach life skills in 5th grade. We were just in a classroom in ESA. We've been teaching or getting in classrooms quite a bit, and we bring this up. And I'll be like, do you remember when we came here, if we're talking to the 8th graders, do you remember we had this conversation like 2 years ago? I'm like, no. Like, we were all in the gym. How do we not remember? But this is what I worry about, is that either we're not doing it enough or we're not having enough attendance for parents. But if anybody has ideas on how to get that message out, I think it's super important. The other sad part is I don't think we're getting all the reports of the situations or incidents that are happening. I think a lot are handling them internally or maybe at home, and that's okay. We're seeing that a lot of our suspects are, on the Ivory Coast or in Nigeria, or FBI and Homeland Security can investigate those. So when we get an IP address that lists to those areas, we can forward our cases on. Our first case, the one from 2020, our suspect was in Chicago, so we were able to identify that person. But sorry, I'm going on a rant. But I wish this would really stick the first time we have the conversations, but I was a kid once too, and I know how important it is to keep on harping on them, but also to give them answers if it does happen.
I have a question, follow up on a couple things actually. So with the money part of it, is that really the end game? That they really want to get you to send them money in terms of doing that, rather than just the images and pictures? So it's a big moneymaker for some individuals, right?
It is. So we also have adults that are falling victim to this. Obviously, adults have more money. It's rare that kids do, but they'll even settle for gift cards. So they know that young teenage boys are going to have gaming gift cards. They're going to have Amazon, Target, all those, where they will accept a gift card. I don't know how that works. I wish these people would get jobs and they wouldn't do this type of thing and use their smarts for something else. But you can actually give a gift card online to them and somehow they get their money. But it is financially driven. How or why, I don't know. And like I said, for the females, they're going for content because they could be selling it on the dark web, or again, they're using it to get the boys to send. Money.
So I have two other questions. So you talked about the SAVE group from your conference in terms of what's there. So it's really a student group called SAVE, right? Which is the Students Against Violence Everywhere. They're the ones who came up with some of the ideas and suggestions for things to do to help promote that awareness, right?
Yeah,
but it's a student group.
Yeah, it's a student group, and then they have like advisors, whether that be teachers or whoever. But like I said, it's a nationwide kind of group or club. So they take ideas from like whoever organizes it nationwide, and they kind of some of them do their own, like they've created their own in McGuanago, and some of them they run with like the nationwide kind of bigger events that they have throughout the school year. So they'll kind of create their own, or they'll run with whatever they have. Yeah.
Great. And so that's a more pay attention, Anna and Natalie, in terms of student groups. The other question I had was on the pie diagram. Maybe go back up a slide or two. So what does it mean for the extra patrol? Is the extra patrol like when we have activities and athletic events here?
Yep.
Is that what that relates to? So that's just, I shouldn't say necessarily normal, but routine, that for football games, high school graduations, basketball games, we'll have an extra patrol here typically?
Yeah, so between the special events kind of pie and the extra patrols, that's whether officers are like, maybe Julie and I are up here for a football game and someone will stop up and hang out with us for a little bit who's on the road, and they'll kind of see what's going on, and they'll maybe just drive through. If there's a basketball tournament and on a Saturday morning, they'll drive through and just make sure everything's good. So along those lines, sometimes if a third shift officer is bored, he'll come up here and sit in the parking lot for a couple minutes and hang out.
And I would be neglect. I mean, I think, thank you to the Village of Pewaukee Police Department, Chief Heyer, is that his name?
Yep.
We've had a great working relationship with the Village Police Department for as many years as I've been on the school board, and the response times have been great. And I think, Julie, you said you've been here now 7 years already. I mean, it's amazing how quickly time does pass, but I think without you, it would be a whole different environment today. But so thank you for being here. Thank you for continuing to be a part of the educational process here, because I'm guessing you do a lot of education, whether it's on one-on-one or group settings kinds of things. And that's really important, because there's just continues to be a tremendous amount of external pressures and influences, such as the internet things that are out there that are causing students to, again, make bad decisions and bad choices every once in a while. So thank you to the Village Police, and thank you to the Chief for supporting us here. So,
I do have another question. On that slide about the Save Promise Club, at the very bottom, you talked about the no cell phone Fridays. Can you speak to, there's a lot of talk about cell phones in the schools. Can you speak to our current climate here in our secondary schools? How little or how much you think cell phones contribute to some of these issues that we're seeing?
Do you want to touch on the high school?
Yeah, so I've seen good and bad things come out of cell phones, and I think when it comes to like the no cell phone Fridays, if I remember correctly, like McGuanago said, students can have them on them, they just can't have them out. Obviously, parents sometimes have that concern. If there's an issue, I want my child to be able to contact me. They can have it on them, they just can't have it out. So we've seen teachers implement cell phone use within their classrooms. They'll, let the administrators know or other staff members, like, hey, my class is going to be out in the hallway, they're doing a project, they will be on their phones. And I think that's great because we all have them. We're on it checking email and doing other things throughout the day, so I understand that it definitely helps to be able to implement that into the curriculum. But what we're seeing also is students who are using it. We had a cyberbullying case last year where students are recording in the classroom, students who have no idea they're there to learn, and there's embarrassing videos of them that are being posted. So students are they're using them for something very negative. We also see students who might be talking to somebody from a different district or outside of our school, and they'll, become upset because there's an ongoing issue in their messaging. So I see some negative things come from, cell phones. Again, I think there's a good reason to have them here at school and then a reason not to. I think what we learned from McGuanago, they actually had a few students come to our conference and speak, and they said, we're really talking to other students and we're having that communication. And it was really weird at first because if you go into a room of teenagers, maybe not a school, but you see that they're all on their phones and they're doing something, where this really cleared that space for them to actually talk to each other and communicate. And people that may not talk to certain other students, they're all kind of coming together. The same with the hot chocolate event. It was, bringing everybody together. Everybody's welcome. No cell phones. We're just here to talk and offer, kindness for the day or the morning.
Could you expound on the good?
On the good of cell phone use?
In schools.
So like I said, sometimes they'll use them for curriculum, or if they're using a cell phone to create a video for the class. That I think is really a good thing, or a good way to use a cell phone. It's, being, that's what I'm looking for. A teacher's overseeing that. So they're not recording things that they shouldn't. They're using it to create a project or a video that they're going to show the class. I think that is a really good thing to be able to use a cell phone for. And I kind of already talked about the negative things, but that's what I would say would be really a good thing.
So the ability to do a video in class is worth the massive amount of negative. So that when I was young, it was the expression was, well, when I was young, you sent your child to a school, you knew where their mind was all the time. You knew what that child was able to see in that school all the time. There was no question that something else was going to come into that environment that you were not aware of. It's a school, it's contained. So you knew everything that your child could possibly see because it's in the school. Cell phones changes that, or flips it on its head. You have no idea where your child's mind is at any time when they have a phone. You have no idea who your child is being accessed by, who they're talking to. That seems to me a tremendous downside to the one possibility of creating a video in the class. And I would question whether the teacher couldn't do something else besides that to teach reading and writing and math. And that they have to have that video capability on the phone, and therefore we should have phones in the school. But thank you for mentioning the the good part.
We're probably not going to have any fans from the students, but I'm a proponent of it. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, I didn't have cell phones. I know a lot's changed in today's day and age. I know there's benefits to technology and the change, and it's a good thing. But I see the harm that it does, and I'm a proponent of not going back to the 80s or 90s. That's just me. But I also see, you know, I use technology, I use email, I use cell phones. So I definitely see a benefit to not having them. I don't know if that's something that we would get everybody on that bandwagon, but I think no cell phone Fridays, it would be a start to see how it goes and to see how the students handle that and staff, and maybe see where it goes. So we have a lot of steps to take to get to that point. It's just our ideas that we're hoping to.
When the phone was on, you said you were describing a restriction that had the phone on but now out, or what was?
So what they, and this is just off of McGuanago's policy, they can have it in their pocket, but they cannot have it out. So they can't be in the hallway on a phone, they can't have it out in class, they can't have it out at lunch.
So it can buzz?
I'm assuming that it could.
Okay. So it's I don't know why people don't see this right off the top of your head, because it's even in adults. You see it with adults. They're sitting there with their phone. They're talking to somebody, but they're already here. So clearly whatever's going on here is not capturing their attention. You put that in a classroom with students, it would seem to me that that's a massive distraction for any child. They're just waiting for that thing to buzz, you know? And I've sat with students who are being tutored, and the thing is right there. And they're doing their work here, but there's always one eye out for that. They don't have that much mental capacity to be able to split like that. So, but thank you for the suggestions about that. I think it's a huge problem.
Julie, that's one of our goals for this year, is to evaluate that in the policy. Have you ever attended one of our strategic planning meetings?
No, but I think I should.
Okay, so it's May
Yes,
5th, 7th, and 12th. They're all the same, like you don't have to come to all three, but if you guys could come and share your experiences with the parents that show up, that's our topic of conversation on those nights. We would appreciate that greatly. Tammy can give you the details.
Yeah.
All right, that would be wonderful.
Thank you again for all you do and for sharing tonight. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I was just going to add on to Stacy's point. Yeah, we are planning to have students there to talk about the cell phone policy.
Okay.
So we would love to get input, and I think it's one of those things where kind of what Mary was talking about before with having that phone and having it buzz. A big thing that it's just the world we live in. Everyone has phones, even at your job. Adults have phones on the table, so I think it's just really kind of a part of our lives now, but I really think I'm hearing what you're saying, and I don't think, I'm personally not opposed to anything you're saying, and I think it would be really valuable to have your feedback, and this club sounds amazing, and like Larry said, even though I'm graduating, I would love to, like Anna, I'm sure, we would just love to implement this. This sounds great, so.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, of course, thank you for speaking. It was really insightful, so.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
All right, next we're going to move on. John is going to present the first draft of the 25-26 budget and staffing proposal.
All right, thanks, Brent. So tonight we give you our introduction to the budget proposal for this upcoming year. The administrative team working together has built this budget over the last 6 months to conform to the revenue realities that we project coming forward. We're going to learn a little bit about what some of those revenue expectations are and what other driving forces behind it. We'll also talk about the budget as a plan. So when we talk about the budget as a plan, we're looking at 18 months, 16 months down the road from when we're developing this and making assumptions. We have to make hundreds of assumptions when it comes to building a budget, just like in your house. If something happens in November that you didn't expect, you have to cover it. So we build the budget with resources available to be able to address any contingency that we might run into during the fiscal year. First and foremost, we want to always recognize the community. The resources that are made available to do the job that we're doing and being able to deliver on the promises that we make to the community. And that biggest promise is opening the door to each child's future. How do we grow our mission? How do we live our mission in delivering the program within the district and do it in a fiscally responsible manner. So we use conservative estimates to the best of the information that we have available at the time to be able to build a budget that we think can be executed. From a budget timeline, the budget is finalized at the end of October. So there's 3 critical pieces of information that we don't have at this point. One is, what is the third Friday in September pupil count going to be? That is one of the key determinants. Enrollment drives the revenue limit for the district. That pupil count is essential to calculate that revenue limit. That's done on the third Friday in September. The second piece that's in there is, what are the values? What are the values in our community? That is certified at the beginning of October. That determines the apportionment of the levy, how much is going to be charged to each household in the community. And the third key piece is certified on October 15th. That is the equalization aid that we can expect in the community. We're going to talk about revenue limit and what a revenue limit means for school districts, and how is it determined, the amount of property taxes that will support the general fund operations of the district and the relationship to that general aid, that equalization aid that we'll receive. Please feel free to ask any questions as we go along, because we're gonna have a lot of information. And again, the purpose tonight is to introduce this. If you have any further questions or want to talk through the budget process, I'm wide open to meet with you to go through that. The board will be presented at its next meeting on May 19th, the adoption of this preliminary operating budget. Again, the original budget, or the budget for the year, is certified at the end of October. So as a quick summary, we have a balanced budget again. For years, we've had a practice of putting dollars into reserve, budgeting to put $100,000 into reserves, into our operating reserves, to improve the financial position of the district. In this last biennium for 24-25 and 25-26, we have built balanced budgets where revenues in the general fund are equaling expenditures. We do not have an operating reserve contribution built into the initial budget. Just the overtime, the constriction of resources that we have and the needs that we have to be able to deliver the program have eliminated the ability to build that into our preliminary budget without having reductions in staff or costs. And we'll learn more about how that staff is built out in the district. Staffing plan is the key driver of this. We go through a lot of time to develop a comprehensive staffing plan in the district, and it's very student-centric. The staffing plan is derived starting with the high school course selection process that you will go through in January. We determine what are the students, what are the desires for courses, how is that going to drive staffing, secondary level, all the way down to elementary, and then how many staff do we have to add, or do we have opportunities within there where we can reduce sections of staff because of lower numbers of students. So that staffing component of the budget generates over 79% of the overall cost of operating the district. So the vast majority of what we spend, and I'm going to touch on that also in a little bit. There's 2 primary sources of revenue that this budget proposal focuses on for increases for this next year. About a week ago, the Supreme Court ruled that the $325 increase to the revenue limit per pupil was upheld. That was included in statutes. We are budgeting based on $415 per pupil increase to the revenue limit, about $90 more than what's currently in statute. That matches what approximately a CPI increase would be. I'm going to get back to that. So I just wanted to plant the seed. We're also building this based on reimbursement rate of 35% for special education aid. That's a very conservative estimate based on what has been asked from all of the agencies, and the governor's budget, the state superintendent's budget, the School Administrators Alliance is all looking for 45 to 60% funding on those costs. Special education aid is a reimbursement program, so what we spend this year is aided the following year. You're reimbursed for a percentage of those costs from the state level. And that number has been declining. I will show you some of the data on that. And then the rising cost. If you look at the CPI over the last 3 to 4 or 5 years, 8%, 4.8% has been driving costs. Everybody knows that costs have gone up for just about everything that we're dealing with. Our revenue has not kept up with that increase in inflation. So it puts more and more pressure on the personnel side and on the non-personnel side to become more efficient. And through the strategic plan, one of the big goals of the facilities and operations in particular, is how do we get more efficient? How do we squeeze every dollar we can out of those things that don't touch the classroom so more can be available to use in the classroom? So that's a big goal.
So with these per pupil increases up to $415 and that increased reimbursement percentage up to 35, when we're dealing with, some of these things like the staffing increases and things like that, how much will those numbers help defray some of those deficits we could potentially be looking at?
Great question. So when we project the budget from an initial standpoint, so when I first start working on this in October, we'll project where do we think our costs are going to go based on what we know at that point in time. At that point in time, we predicted $200,000 to $300,000, maybe $400,000 of a deficit. Between bringing projected expenditures down in the budget development process and these projections for the revenues, we're able to balance those. So when we talk about inflation and the lag, all the way through 2009, the revenue limits came into play in 1993. Revenue limits were indexed to inflation from 1993 to 2009, which means that per pupil amount went up by the rate of inflation each year. Beginning in 2009, that was removed from the statute, and it was up to the legislature each year to determine how much are we going to allocate for an increase to the revenue limit, If you look at that over time and compare the rate of inflation to what the increases have been, the Fiscal Bureau has come up with this analysis to show that the difference from 2009 to 2024 is about $3,380 per pupil of allowable revenues. So that explains partially the pressure that is on districts more recently. You see all of the operating referendum that are out there, 148 operating referendum in 2024, and this year in April alone, 62 operating referendum in school districts. A lot of it is because of that cost of inflation, the cost of hiring staff, the cost of retaining staff is not keeping up. The revenues are not keeping up with the cost of doing that, which continues to put pressure on district finances. I talked a little bit earlier about the special education aid estimate and why we projected 35%. This year was projected at, actually in 22-23, the reimbursement rate was about 32%. You can see there's been some additional investment. In the last biennium, it was about $97 million was added to the pool of money that is used to reimburse those costs. As the costs accelerate faster than the pool of money that is allocated is some certain amount. So one of the things we advocate for is to turn that into a some sufficient amount. So if costs are estimated to be reimbursed at 32.4%, but that cost of providing those services increases faster than it was projected, it gets prorated down, which is what happened for years. As low as 24% was what was reimbursed as that pool of money stayed the same and the cost grew faster than the pool to distribute.
I mean, what's the disadvantage though, in terms of the some sufficient versus some certain? I mean, because it would switch it, right, a whole lot, but I mean, they haven't moved to some sufficient rather than some certain, right?
From a state standpoint, if we're providing revenues and we have a fixed amount, we've got $5 billion to spend, this cost grows faster. It puts pressure on the state revenues to make up the difference if the amount they need to reimburse gets bigger. So put it in as a fixed amount, and now you have a target that you know is not going to grow on you.
So between the inflation and between the differences here with the some sufficient versus some certain, I mean, it's two areas where, I mean, the state is kind of not necessarily taking money away, but they are based on what was originally out there, right? I mean, originally the inflation factors were built in, And I assume at some point, it was probably built in here too, right? To have it be a,
Yeah, I believe back in the 80s, it was actually a target of somewhere around 60%. The federal government had indicated they would reimburse 60% of the cost of special education services after the law was passed in the early 70s. I don't believe it's ever hit that dollar amount. So, but we focus on those two key areas. There's, again, hundreds of assumptions on different revenues that go into the operating budget and how we're going to fund it. Rather than spread this over a bunch of assumptions, the School Administrators Alliance has really channeled the advocacy efforts into these two areas because they have the greatest impact on the greatest number of districts. So some of the highlights, the operating budget. So we're going to talk about two things here, and you'll see it in the slides. Operating budget is Fund 10 and Fund 27. So the general fund plus the special education fund added together. Overall, the budget is increasing by about just say here over 3%, 3.05% for this upcoming year. Again, the operating budget. We have eliminated that projected deficit from the initial plan through our staffing plan and through being able to provide greater efficiency in some of the other areas of the budget, i.e. utilities, transportation, areas of that nature. The property tax levy, with this increase in the budget, the levy is flat. It changes by $2,400 on $27 million. So the levy is flat. We're projecting an increase in property values, very conservative this year, at about 2.68%. Values can fluctuate. 2 years ago, we were over 15%. That number is certified in October. We have to make a conservative estimate. That way, the tax rate, and schools do not generate their levy based on the rate that's passed. You set the levy at the dollar amount for the tax levy. The rate is a byproduct of what happened with the values in the community. Say that again. The schools do not set their levy based on a rate. So if property value goes up 15% and we set a rate of $5, we don't get 15% more. We set a fixed levy and the rate would go down if property grows faster than we anticipated. We're also looking at a decline now, looking at our enrollment at going down again next year. For several years, we've talked about the potential of developments in our community and how they could bring more students in that. They have not brought the student population that would offset demographics in the county and the state. And I'm going to show you some information on what's happening statewide with enrollment and in the county here. For years, Pewaukee has been, according to Sarah Kent at the Applied Population Lab, an anomaly, a statistical anomaly. Birth rates were low, population was declining of school-age children, and Pewaukee was growing. We had turnover. We are an attractive district for families who want to bring their kids into this program, into the educational program here. Continues that way. That has slowed, and the demographic trends are taking over a little bit more, a little stronger than what the residential turnover and the new housing in particular developments have been driving. And again, the focus of all the allocations in the budget is really driven by the strategic plan. How are we allocating those resources to meet the goals that the board and the community have identified? Those sessions coming up in the next 2 weeks with the strategic plan are going to help us refocus again. Some of these resources that we have out of the strategic planning process comes an engagement with the community and what their expectations are and what can we do different. What are we doing now and how can we get better at what we're doing through continuous improvement and strategic planning and realignment of those resources. So quick summary financial. Now we look at general fund. The general fund is going up 2.61%. You remember I said the operating funds are all going up 3.05. The projected cost in the special education fund is looking to increase about 5.9%. It continues a trend that's been there for 10 years where the cost of providing those services is accelerating faster than what the general fund costs are growing in the district. And again, we do not plan in this proposal for an additional contribution to our operating reserves. You can see the decrease, that 1.18% is about 31 students that we're projecting from a resident FTE, full-time equivalency students. General fund revenues and expenses will increase about $1 million, just a little over $1 million, or 2.61%. The bottom line on here, as we look at our operating reserves, we've worked really hard over the years to increase that operating fund balance, because that's what provides us, it affords us the ability to not have to go out to borrow money to meet our operating needs when we have our biggest cash deficits. For years, we had to borrow money through a tax and revenue anticipation note and pay interest on that. When higher interest rates are out there, you could be talking another $100,000 or more. I believe when I started here, it was about $250,000 in interest that was paid on that short-term borrowing just to meet all the costs that we had at that point. We have eliminated the need to cash flow borrow. As of about 28% of our operating funds in reserve, that's still really tight. It's still really lean. Hence, we bring each year to the board a line of credit for those times when we do get really tight on the cash flow for operating costs, using the line of credit to fill it short term until our revenues come in. In the general fund, you can look at our revenues. On the revenue side, the largest source of ours, 54% plus, is from local revenues. The way the state is funded in operating costs for school districts, the revenue limit is made up of local property taxes and state equalization aid, the green piece over there. When you have a community that has high property value, it drives down the amount of aid that you get. So high property value per pupil, you get less aid. It's the way that the distribution formula works for state equalization aid. Yes.
So in that case, it's like, think of Lake Geneva or anywhere up by Minocqua, right? I mean, all those school districts, high property, but.
Yes, and for different reasons. Some places it's density of students changes the value. Some places it's sparsity. If there aren't many kids and you have high property value, you're most likely going to get very little state aid or no state aid.
John, before you get too far, did you say you're going to spend $1 million more next year?
That's what we're projecting from the budget for 24-25.
And you don't have any increase in student enrollment?
Correct. Minimal. We have a flat enrollment. We have 31 students we're projecting less over 14 grades. So you're talking an average of about 2 kids. And I will touch on that in a minute here, Mary.
When you say you're going to touch on that, are you going to touch on the $1 million?
I'm going to touch on what drives that in school districts.
Well, this district would be sufficient.
Yep.
So will you be able to itemize the $1 million versus what we did last year?
It's in your appendix, and it shows the itemization by function, which is the way that the board adopts a budget.
Right, but I'm not recalling. So we've got last year's budget, we've got this year's budget, and you've broken down this year's budget.
Each function. Yes.
Right, but my question is, is there some place where you're going to show us, or you're going to tell us now exactly what the $1 million is?
If there's a particular manner in which you'd like to see it, in business affairs, we review it by object, which is our salaries, benefits, purchase services. That's a slide ahead of me here. That's the way we would break it down. Or we can break it down by function. Here's undifferentiated curriculum, here's regular curriculum, here's building support, administration, all the different core functions that we operate under. I can put that together prior to the meeting on the 19th. I'll send that summary out and show the difference in each one of those areas, if that works.
Possibly. Is that the same thing as, so $1 million title, and then a list of all the items that add up to that 1 million? Is that what you're saying?
Every function that's gone up or gone down, yes. I can show you that.
Right, but tell me what function has gone up or gone down. It doesn't tell me what you're spending the money on. It just tells me the pots are bigger.
Are you looking for itemized by individual
account?
By individual account number?
No. I want people who don't sit on the board to be able to understand what it is. Not 0.00472 has increased by 2%. $1 million, item by item, what is costing us $1 million more this year than last year? Is that something
Let's
what you're
talk
suggesting?
about it offline, and I can give you the best result to get you what you're looking for.
Okay, so I didn't want to answer yes to your proposal if that wasn't going to get me what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yep. Open enrollment is a key revenue in the district, the red piece of the pie. That is where we look at income from that's our revenue from open enrollment coming in. It's about $3.3 million in the upcoming budget. A lot of that is built by inflationary increases to the reimbursement rate, and we're anticipating about an increase of 10 students net to our open enrollment numbers coming into the district. Breaking down the general fund revenues in a couple of different formats for you. You can see the tax levy in the general fund is actually decreasing with an increase to equalization aid, and that revenue limit increase is about $858,000. So of the $1 million increase projected revenue, $858,000 is driven through the revenue limit, either by, in our case, an increase in state aid and a decrease in the local property taxes at the general fund level. On the bottom half of this chart, it identifies another way of looking at this with more specific revenues in the general fund and what some of the changes are that we're projecting in those areas. As I talked about revenue limit in the past and allowable revenue increases, indicated that since 2009, the revenue limit had been taking off from the CPI increase. You can see in 2009-10 and forward, it was fixed at $200 a couple of years. Act 10 happened in 2011-12, and our revenue limit went down by $594 per pupil. And then after that, it was a combination. So the combination of revenue limit allowable increase per pupil and per pupil aid, those are two different items. They've both been used to distribute additional resources to schools since 2012-13. If we go back to fiscal year 17-18 through 21, we average about $211 per pupil that we received in additional resources over that time frame. In 2021-22, 22-23, the revenue limit went up by 0 and the per pupil aid went up by 0. So the resource the district had was the one-time federal money that was there. If you had the average of 211, and it would have been we would have had that increase to offset those costs when the fixed funds, when that one-time money went away, that increase would have been over 3 years going into 23-24, $633 instead of $325. If you add in the following year, this current school year where we had $325 per pupil, that's $650 compared to $844. That is a driving force behind a lot of the operating referendums that you're seeing. Those 2 years with no increases and then the subsequent increases that were approved, not keeping up with those cost of inflation and the cost of operating within the district. And you also see that the 415, and we're not projecting an increase in the per pupil aid in our budget, but that $90 very well could come as per pupil aid increase in a different pool. As you can see over time on our revenue limit, the gray bar on the top has gotten bigger. We've really managed our costs to increase what our share of the state equalization aid pot would be that would be coming to Pewaukee. That has created flat to decreasing general fund tax levies for the district over the last 6 to 7 years, with increasing funding for our revenue limit coming from state equalization aid. As we look at expenses, salaries and benefits are the biggest part of our entire budget. It accounts for over 78% of the operating budget in the district. If you add in personal services, the green piece up there, that's where we can provide services more efficiently by outsourcing them to a third party to bring them in, like transportation, rather than employing our own staff. That also includes utilities. So between those, you're at almost 95% of the operating budget is personnel related or services that we're paying somebody else to provide because they can do it more efficiently, more cost effectively than what we could do it in-house. As we look at our expenditures moving into the next year, we always try to say where are our largest risks, what are our emerging risks in here. That's a risk reward. A couple of years ago, we switched to self-funding our health plan so that we were able to control our costs and retain the reward if we had good performance. That's a risk. If you have bad performance beyond what your expectation was for the given year, that's when you would potentially see deficits that come in. That's probably the largest risk area from an expenditure side that we have. From a revenue side, we have the state budget being developed right now. A lot of that, we don't have a lot of information. We have to go on what is being advocated for and what previous biennial budgets have provided for resources, and then which bucket is it going to go into. So when I talk about our 415 and our increase in special education aid, that's based on conversations that we've had and where we're projecting those revenues, where we think it would be reasonable for that to happen in the upcoming biennium. Depending on when that state budget is finalized, it could be, it has been for a few years in June. It's gone as late as the first week of October before the negotiations were done and a state budget was developed. If that happens, it leaves us very little time because October 15th, aid is certified and you have to set your levy by November 1st. So we have to be very conservative on our estimates and conservative on what we're projecting on the revenue side and on the expenditure side to be able to react if what ultimately comes out of the process does not match what we projected. Talked a little bit about enrollment and where it's been going. You can see in 2019, we hit our peak for resident enrollment for FTE, full-time equivalency students, and experienced about a 1% decrease, a 3% decrease that next year in the fall of 2020. This happened statewide, and the declining enrollment has continued for the last 4 years. We had one up year there where it bumped up a little bit. That's why we keep anticipating with the new developments in the community. There's 65 homes that are completed in the last few months or under construction right now that we anticipate that they're going to bring some kids, but we can't build a budget. We're also in a unique situation where because of the declining enrollment exemption in our revenue limit, if we grow in kids this fall, we will have no additional revenue authority. All it will do is eliminate the declining enrollment exemption that we have on our revenue limit. So we would have to grow 2 to 3% to see any additional revenue for the upcoming year. For open enrollment, we're projecting 359 students coming in and about 110 going out. Again, the open enrollment window is still open right now. It's open until April 30th. Then the selection process begins and will be brought to the board back on May 19th for approval of the applications that we're recommending for attendance. Here's a little bit of statewide data when we look to enrollment. The bar in the center here, we have about 807,000 students in the state of Wisconsin right now, 4K through 12th grade. That's projected by 28-29 to decrease by roughly 7%. That's a combination of live births and demographic data. Families are smaller than they have been in the past, which is decreasing that enrollment statewide. This is from the Applied Population Labs. We use Applied Population Labs, we use our own local experience, and we use the MD Roffers study that was conducted in 2023 to meld all the data together to try to project where our September enrollment is going to go. Staffing plan, again, almost 80% of our budget is driven by staffing in the district. So having a comprehensive plan that's tied out is really important. Overall, we're looking at a decrease of about 0.82 staff across the district in various positions. The staffing plan includes at Pewaukee Lake Elementary a reduction of 1 FTE staff position where we had some moves for sections to accommodate the smaller number of students that are coming into the district now. Horizon still has the same number of sections, and it's in your report information. Asa Clark and the high school are down just a little bit in their buildings.
John, did you say you were expecting $1 million in increase in revenue overall?
Yes, in the general fund. Let me put that into context, Mary. CPIU is what is determined for giving raises for staff members throughout the district. CPIU is at 2.95% right now. That is what the state, if you're collective bargaining, that is the max amount that you can bargain to. So put that into context, that generates about $600,000 of increased cost just to retain the staff that we have right now. Health insurance, we spend just over $5 million on health insurance a year. We had a good renewal in comparative standards at about 5.8%. We're projecting the rates to go up. That is $260,000 of additional cost that you have to cover through those revenue sources. Those are the two largest. Transportation, we spend about $1.4 million on transportation. That's tied to a CPI increase, so roughly 3% that cost will go up next year unless we can refine it down and drop routes within the district.
Right, you're giving me costs. I asked about revenue.
Revenue and cost have to match. So,
I asked about this, you said, and I'm just confirming that I understand what you're saying. You expect to get an additional 1 million tax dollars?
No.
Just put it, and they're all tax dollars, John. Whatever pocket is not relevant to the question, unless you're getting private grants. But anyway, you expect to get $1 million in revenue someplace, and corresponding $1 million increase is what we've got on the, I just want to make sure I've got it right. Okay.
Correct. Yep. So overall, the staffing plan has gone through hours and hours and hours of refinement and development to make sure, number one, all the student needs are being met that we have, and that we are, number two, fitting it within the revenue realities that we have within the district. The tax levy, again, about a $2,400 difference from current year to next year. Essentially, no change in the overall tax levy that's projected for next year. As you can see, the blue part of that, the general fund, that's our operating budget. That is the largest portion of that local tax levy. What we cannot account for here is levy credits. So if you look at your property tax bill, you'll see school levies credit on there. That is a pool of money that's determined through the biennial budget that is apportioned to all of the school districts that set a tax levy in the state. We received several $1 million, over $5 million. So as you look at the total property tax levy, we have about $27.5 million. What is paid by our taxpayers through property taxes is about $5 million less from that levy credit. We do not know what that credit is. It is determined after the levies are certified. It is the pool of money in the last biennium. About $570 million was added to the pool of dollars used for those credits. So a significant portion of what was provided as funding for K-12 education was in the form of those levy credits in the last biennial budget. The debt service levy that we're projecting for next year includes all debt service costs associated with the note issues that was approved at the last board meeting. It will be closing next week, or 2 weeks on May 7th. And next week will be the closing on that. That will provide us the final amount of resources for completing the construction projects on the campus. And as you can see, the tax rate decreases about 17 cents, we're projecting it. If those values grow faster than the 2.68, that decrease will be greater. Again, it does not change the total dollar amount. The district sets a dollar amount for the levy. And here just gives you a quick history of the tax rate in the district. As you can see, in 2011-12, we were at close to $12, and it's been on the decline ever since, meaning our property tax property tax that's been passed by the board is growing slower than what the property values are in the community. And any other questions?
Yes. Would you be able to present to the board a budget that has no increases in it? That is exactly what we had last year.
Have we prepared one? No. We traditionally prepare a budget that is going to meet the revenue projections that we're having for the year. We have not gone through that exercise of what it would take to reduce costs to have no increase in the general fund budget.
It might be a wise thing to do. I think it matters, I think, that we're $33 trillion in debt. So for you to say, for the administration to say that this money's coming in or we're going to raise it, you're talking about a pot that's $33 trillion in debt. It comes from the people. So all that money we got from all the feds and all that you have cited before, the pot that they're talking about that funds this school, which is every one of us, including the 2 students here, is $33 trillion in debt. It's way below zero. It would seem to me to behoove us to at least not spend more this year than last year, because we cannot survive with a $33 trillion debt, and we won't.
So you're connecting the federal debt to?
I'm connecting, the debt is not,
Okay.
the debt is to you, the debt is to me, the debt is to Tammy, it's everyone. We are the security, the grantor, the guarantors of that debt.
Sure.
Whether it comes from a pocket of state, whether it comes from the property taxes, it comes from right here,
Yep.
our dollar. Okay. It would seem to be a good time to consider tightening things so that we're not increasing our expenses, especially since we have, and you're projecting, decline in enrollment for the foreseeable future. To not be tapping into funds that are not there. To say that we're getting federal money is to say we're just digging the federal dollar deficit deeper, debt deeper. It's not like there's a pile of money we're getting. It's not there. So that would be my request and suggestion, that you present to the board a budget that has no increases in it for next year. Thank you.
I think you're oversimplifying the matter. If we have a same level of expenses one year after another, you're basically reducing what you're spending. Costs go up. And you're looking at a business financial manager who does an incredible job managing our expenses. So for me to see a balanced budget, I say kudos to you and your team, and that includes a lot of people I know. They have worked very hard to create a balanced budget based on the estimates that they have. And that has placed the school district in a very good financial position that we do not need to get operating referendums.
Yes.
And I hope everyone in this room recognizes that, including you, Mary. We are one of the few districts in the area that has not had to have an operating referendum. And that's for a good reason, because we have quality people using their training and experience to give us good estimates on what we need to do to run the best district we can.
And it's because we are such a great district that we are retaining the students that we are. I mean, I just talked to individuals from the Kettle Moraine and Waukesha school districts. Their decline in enrollment is much larger than ours. Their financial woes are much more difficult than ours, and they're looking at closing schools and combining. So I think we're blessed to be in this community, and to echo what Stacy said, John, for all the work that you and your team have done to continually balance our budget and not have us out there like these other districts doing operational referendums. Kudos. Thank you very much.
And I think you said it very well. It's a team effort. There's every member of the admin team, and I say this often, it's the K-12-ness of the decision-making that's out there, and that alignment with the strategic plan and the goals that we have as a district. You have professionals in place that know what it takes to drive student success, and there's a cost of doing that. And you put people in a position to succeed with the resources that they need to be successful, and you're able to come up with positive results. And we've had positive results for a long time now.
And John, you didn't cover it, I know, but it's one of the sections within your document where you talk about the things that we already do and continue to do relative to saving money for the district. I mean, it's just, again, when we've done some of the additional buildings, I mean, we've basically managed to actually lower the utility costs. I mean, we do everything, and we know utility costs keep going up all the time. And if we probably had not done our self-insured health insurance, I mean, those numbers would be off the charts too. I mean, so it's everything that we do really does help us to control or contain the cost as much as we can. I mean, we can't necessarily do things specifically related to some of the salaries and other benefits that we offer, or bus transportation, those kinds of things. I mean, but it's still a tough challenge to try to balance that budget and make sure that we do stay within our spending authority and limits that are out there for us, so.
I'd just like to push back, John, on this last statement you said. I think you said we've been doing a good job for a while, pushing out, opening the doors. It doesn't hurt to remind the board that we have not been doing a good job. We've been doing 60% proficiency reading for the past 10 years. Thank you.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I invite you to send me your questions. If there's a specific format you'd like to see some things in, let me know. I can provide that in advance of the meeting on the 19th. We can, whatever each individual member sends me, I will then we'll include it in the packet that goes out for the 19th, so everybody can be aware of the resource that we have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Next, we need to consider and possible approval of curriculum renewal cycle update. Anthony, I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, so currently as like I said, you saw CTE and K-3 literacy at our last meeting and took action tonight. But currently we have a 5-year curriculum renewal and revision schedule. I had started meeting with a group of our learning coaches and some other individuals across the district early this year to really look at that process and try and identify some process improvements. We talked to some other districts in the area as well. So what we would like to do is move from a 5-year cycle to a 6-year cycle, and that will do a couple of things. It will offer an additional year of curriculum writing time for those folks engaged in developing the curriculum to take a deeper dive into that. Specifically when the board receives curriculum reports like you did last time around, and then have access to the draft curriculums on our online curriculum warehouse. You see everything there with the exception of proficiency scales and summative assessments, which you guys would probably consider like the end of the unit test type thing. That is not completed at that point in time. That's completed in the next year. So moving to a 6-year cycle would allow all of you to get that full picture, proficiency scales and summative assessments included. It will also provide an additional year of implementation in the classroom for all of the teachers. So I'll take questions if anyone has any questions.
Anthony, are you proposing that, and sorry you're getting the brunt of these would normally go
No,
to Mike.
that's fine, yeah.
Because Mike is our guy, you're just his stand-in. Are we voting on the 6-year?
Correct, yep, to move from a 5 to a 6-year.
Why can't we go to a 10?
You approve the schedule. Our process has been to do it every 5 years for each of our main content areas and some of our programs. So, in speaking with Mike, you approve the schedule.
Okay, so my question would be, why can't we go to 10? I was always suspect of 5 years because I'm a teacher, so I do not need to sit in a lot of meetings. I actually teach, and I do it well when I did it. But it puzzled me because as I understood your predecessor laying it out, you took 2 years to go through and develop the curriculums that you do. So that's how she would start. You'd present yourself and you'd say, we've been working on this for 2 years, et cetera, et cetera. Which means that the thing that you're actually implementing only had 2 years to run. And no teacher, the first year is a wash because you're just getting used to the resources. And you really don't know what you've got until you've gone through it once. So now you're into the second year as a teacher with that particular thing. And you now first have a chance to see what it's doing and tweak it. Okay, that's your second year. Third year, according to your schedule, you've got people already looking to replace that before you ever really know what that's going to do for the teachers who are actually teaching it. So hence my question, why can't you move it to 10 years?
My opinion there would be that in the span of 10 years, there are many things that change. If you look at many of our elective areas and you look at wanting to have, take career and technical education, for example, a 10-year span of time and advancements in what that looks like in industry changes quite a bit. There is regular research that comes out every year that when we know better, we do better. So part of that process is digging into the most up-to-date research for all of our content areas. Additionally, the state of Wisconsin will make changes to their academic standards, and it is our job to ensure that we teach to those standards, which is why a 10-year span, in my opinion, is too long. And researching some of the area districts around us, we found people with 4-year cycles, which seems very quick, to no cycle at all.
Right. But I mean, I've seen you do, it's like the 5-year plan in Russia. You're churning curriculum. Nobody ever gets a really handle on it. And to your point about things change, we are not hiring idiots who are not trained in teaching and not trained in their particular skill set, math or whatever. They're always looking. They're always looking on the internet. They're always, I mean, when you're a teacher, it's annoying because that's all you do is you think about how can you better do this and what can I do to drive this better home to the students. That's not a static process, and you speak of it as if those teachers do nothing unless you tell them.
That is not what I said.
I didn't say that. You said it. I said you speak of it as if. That it's static, that the teachers do not actually massively input and have massive ability to input and add on to as they see fit, detract as they see fit. But then I get back to, again, the 5-year thing. When you're doing only 5 years, in the third year is where a teacher will really start to zero in and say, I don't want this doesn't work, I want to replace it with this, I've seen this over here, it's better. They start doing that, third year, fourth year. Fifth year, you're coming in and telling them they're going to start all over again. I think it's way too short, and I don't think that the reasons that you presented were very good, and I'm speaking as a teacher, not as a board member.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things there. So, I mean, the first thing would be the assumption that every, in our current model of a 5-year curriculum renewal cycle, it is not true that every 5 years we have a complete overhaul and change to everything we're doing. Sometimes there are minor tweaks, sometimes there are changes to priority standards, and that is based on teacher input and implementing the curriculum in the classroom. So it does not necessarily mean that there's going to be a full overhaul. What it does mean is it allows us, and we've been a district engaged in continuous improvement for a long time, it engages us in the process of looking at what we're currently doing and analyzing, is this the best way to continue to do things or not? And sometimes, like I said, minor changes, sometimes more major changes.
There's a great deal of time that goes into that. And again, I refer to your predecessor who said, or the people who presented, who come in and say, we've been working on this a long time. Whether or not they recommend an overhaul, they are putting in time to do this. And if you're suggesting that this has been profitable to the teaching of what we're teaching, we don't have scores to support that. We got a lot of bells and whistles, we got a lot of processes, we got massive procedure, we got almost diddly squat for results. 10 years running, 60%. That is a flat line. That is not a changing line. That is not an increasing line. Flat. So all the time and all the resources that are spent on doing that are not spent on teaching Johnny to read. One-on-one, whatever it takes, but it's right here. You just, little Johnny's right there, you set him down with the book, and you do this. If you are a teacher or a professional like you are, engaged in evaluating resources, evaluating curriculum constantly, where do you find the time to teach little Johnny to sit down and just read? I mean, there's only 24 hours in the day, and they're only here for 12 years. The amount of time you folks describe to us, to me, in all the things you do out here to get them to read, this is a massive amount of time. And this particular thing that you're proposing here, this churning of the curriculum every 5 years, now every 6, is immensely time consuming. I printed out, when you had a curriculum review for us, and you put it out and in our packet, I printed it out and I brought it here. It was this tall. And you gave us 4 days to read it. But never mind that. Anybody going through documents this tall, that takes time, and it's not getting us where we want to be. Because they've done it year after year, and there's no change in the reading scores. Thanks.
Yeah, so Mary, I respect your opinion, but I do want to say that if the board would like to have more time to review that, there was a 4-week window to do so. So it was not 4 days.
It's never been 4 days,
That is
Mary.
completely.
Mary, that is not true.
Excuse
You are
me,
wrong.
excuse
I have
me.
been on this board for 5 years, and I have never been given 4 days to review a curriculum. It is given to us in one meeting, so you've got the preview time for that, and then 2 or 4 weeks later, we approve it. That is not 4 days. And I am moving
Anthony,
to
that
move
was-
on this conversation. This has gone on long enough.
Anthony-
Does anyone have any relevant questions for Anthony about this curriculum change?
Anthony, if I could
I
get back
move to approve the revised curriculum evaluation
You're out
and
of line.
renewal schedule
You're out
as
of order.
presented.
Madam President, we're having a discussion here. Are you closing down the discussion? I have a question
I
for
move
Anthony.
to close this discussion.
This board member is out of line.
Do I have a second?
That you can do.
I move to close this discussion.
On the table, we have a motion to close this discussion. Is there a second on that, or are we continuing discussion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I oppose. You have said you wanted the board to talk, and every time we start talking, either you or somebody shuts it down.
You don't say
Thank you.
anything new, and we've already moved to close this discussion. I move to approve the revised curriculum evaluation and renewal schedule as presented.
But before we go there, I just want to put out there, are there any board members that would wish to have additional time to review or question Anthony before we move on to this motion?
I would like to finish that point because that was not the point I was making at all. It wasn't the time that the board had. Who cares what the board does? It was the time that the people put into it to have generated that. The fact that it came to us, whatever time frame it was, is totally, as completely as irrelevant as I can possibly stress to you. It was that much documentation took time and a lot of effort and a lot of consideration on the part of people here. And I'm saying it's doing us no good. Thank you very much. I'll yield.
Any further discussion? If not, Stacy, I'm going to let you repeat your motion.
I move to approve the revised curriculum evaluation and renewal schedule as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oppose.
All right. Moving on, our next portion is personnel issues. We do have 2 resignations. Sierra Gill, a FIA teacher at Pewaukee, and Amy Tosin, a special education teacher. Let's see, Sierra, she did give birth to a second daughter in January, and has decided that it's really important for her to pour her energy into raising her girls, and I appreciate that. So she has chosen to give her resignation. The other one, Amy Tosin, her family is relocating to Colorado for her husband's job. So can I get a motion, starting with Sierra Gill, to accept her resignation?
I move to accept the resignation of Sierra Gill.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, secondly, the resignation of Amy Tosin.
I move to approve the resignation of Amy Tosin, special education teacher at ASA and PHS.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you so much. There are no employments or leave of absences at this time. Moving on to the review of upcoming activities. This Wednesday is the Kiwanis Scholarship Award Night. It is at WCTC this year. I know there's a handful of us attending. I'm looking forward to that. The board is giving out 4 scholarships this year, so very proud to say that. Then we get into a busy time frame. Strategic planning, our feedback sessions are Monday, May 5th, Wednesday, May 7th, and Monday, May 12th. All of them are for an hour and a half from 6 to 7:30 at night. I plan to attend all 3, but I hope as many board members as possible can at least attend one of those sessions. Looking forward to the discussion we get from our community. It sounds like, I don't know if you can confirm this, John, but I believe we've gotten RSVPs from at least 70 some. Do you know, Tammy?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right, wonderful. Monday, May 19th is our next board meeting, 6 p.m. Business Affairs, 6 p.m. Policy, followed by a 7 p.m. board meeting. Then on Saturday, May 31st at 1 p.m., we do have the high school graduation. Stacy, Larry, Matt, and myself are signed up to attend, and the 4 of us will be handing out diplomas. Thank you so much for your help. So much appreciated. Then followed by the Asa Clark Middle School promotion on Thursday, June 5th at 6 p.m. on the football field, and myself and Matt will be there in attendance. Thank you, Matt. Followed by Friday, June 6th, is our end-of-year celebration and luncheon. It starts out with lunch in the cafeteria at 11:15, followed by a really neat celebration in the auditorium where we take a look at those individuals that have served us so well on our staff, and they're retiring, and we get to celebrate their accomplishments. So that's always a really neat event to attend. Next, we have the CESA, the Cooperative Educational Service Agency's delegate appointment. So this evening, we need to appoint a delegate to attend the annual convention in May. That delegate assembly consists of 1 board member from each of the school districts within CESA 1 region, with special provisions made for areas served by Union High K-8 districts. The Board of Control sets policies, they determine and assess services to be delivered and approve programs cost. Again, that convention is on Tuesday, May 20th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at the CESA 1 office. Larry, you have served in that capacity in the past. Is there anything you want to add to that?
No, other than, it's again, the board members, Board of Control for the CESA is elected by groups of school districts, so you're part of a group, and that's how you get elected to the positions that are open for that. And actually, they note in the minutes, I'm not really up for re-election on the Board of Control. I have at least 1 more year, maybe even 2 left in terms of my position. I'm currently as an at-large position. So this would be just somebody designated to attend the meeting on the May 20th, what's ever in there? And
Yep.
that's it.
20th.
That's all that's there. And I'm more than glad to do that because there's a board meeting that follows that meeting eventually anyway. So I will be there in attendance, and I'm more than happy to serve as a delegate for Pewaukee School District for that annual convention meeting. So
I would like to say, Larry,
Go for
I
it.
would nominate you to be our guy to go to CISA 1. Is there anyone else that would like to take on that role?
And Tammy will have to fill out official paperwork and send that through, just that I'm designated as the official delegate though, so.
Thank you, Larry, for doing that.
So, could I get a motion regards to Larry?
Do you think we need to? Do we need to do a motion?
Well, maybe not. It says a recommended action, but you're right, we don't need to take a vote on that.
Tammy, do you know?
It looks like last year you did.
Oh, all right.
Okay, let's go for it.
I move to appoint Larry Dukes as the representative for the Pewaukee School District at the May 20th Board of Control Annual Convention for CISA 1.
Thanks.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Thanks. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Larry. Thank you for your service in that area.
Larry, would you be, sorry, Brandon, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Would you, there's a couple of meetings that you referenced there, and I think last year I'd asked you for the minutes.
Pardon?
I'll start over. There's a couple of meetings that occur on that night.
Well, there's two.
Each of them
There's
has
the annual
minutes.
Convention, that
Yeah.
meeting is there, and then the board had the board meeting in terms of.
Right, and I think the board meeting is the one that I requested the minutes for, and the agenda and so on and so forth, and treasurer's report. And you were not able to get that for me last year. Would you be able to get that for us this year so we know what that
Well, I
board
can-
does?
Okay, again, it's not my meeting. I can definitely ask the executive director and the folks there, if you want a copy of it, I can have them send you an email of it or whatever, if that's appropriate, so.
Why wouldn't it be appropriate?
I don't know. I
It's a
mean,
CISA meeting, it's a public meeting, it's a public, why
it's
wouldn't it be
publicly
appropriate?
noticed, but again, like I say, I would have to ask if they can send you the minutes. I don't know if they're on their website or not, but I can check in terms of what's there, so.
Okay, and why do you think you can't get them? That was the thing that caught my attention.
Why can't I what?
Get those documents. Why are you not entitled to the minutes? You attended the meeting as a member.
I can get the documents, I'm just not authorized to be a releaser of that information. I don't know in terms of what's there, but I mean, yeah, I mean, if it's.
We're talking about the minutes and the agenda of a public meeting.
Well, it's both. I mean, well, the agenda's out there. I mean, they published the agenda.
Well, I didn't see the agenda for the board. I was there, and I didn't get one when I was sitting there. And the agenda ran through so fast, they didn't even say what it was. There was just a lot of yeses and nos, and I had no idea what they were voting on, hence my question. But your response caught my attention, and I shared it with a few people, because it was not clear as to why you, as an attending board member, thought you could not distribute the minutes of a meeting you attended, a public meeting. So any help you could give me in that regard would be great. Thank you. Probably see you there.
I can check for you.
All right. Thanks, Larry. Next, legislative discussion. John, you already kind of spoke to some of that. I'll let you address that.
So we're in the process right now. There have been two hearings from the Joint Finance Committee. They go statewide and have hearings for public input onto the budget. Feedback that I've heard from the initial meeting or the second meeting that was held in West Allis this year was that it was heavily attended, and a lot of the testimony was given in support of K-12 education and funding K-12 public education within the state of Wisconsin. They heard a lot of that. Hearing was held, two hearings are being held yet. One was today. The fourth and final hearing is tomorrow up north. And then they'll begin their work on the budget proposal and defining, the Fiscal Bureau has provided them with memos detailing the amount of revenues that they anticipate they will have to work with in allocating through the state budget, and begin their work on building that budget proposal and working together with the governor's office to create a proposal that can pass when it goes through. Again, the process, earliest we would anticipate something would be in June, but it should be completed by October prior to the certification of state aid for school districts, to not have it revert back to the prior year's amounts when it goes through that. On a federal level, we're monitoring some of the federal funds that we receive. Pewaukee is not as impacted as other places when it comes to resources like Title I and some of those allocations. From what I understand as of now, 24, 25, the allocations we're safe, that we're going to get what we've been told is our allocation for this fiscal year. Some questions about 25, 26, and then beyond that is when the largest concern is about what the level of funding would be for those programs. Again, areas where there's higher needs are significantly greater impacted than what Pewaukee is.
Awesome, thank you. All right, next, our Board of Education Evaluation Survey. It is that time of year again. Initially, in March of 22, we implemented a survey. That survey now is used to help us evaluate our board effectiveness, preparation for board meetings, and board operations. That survey, for the first time, was shared in April of 2022, and we've been taking it ever since. I do think it is valuable because you're able to give your feedback on how you individually feel the board is operating as a whole. That survey is now open. I personally have already taken it. Tammy, is there a deadline by which?
Candace did not give me a deadline.
Okay, so no deadline, but.
I think we should create an self-imposed deadline. Me being probably the worst offender in the group.
Yeah, I would just say, I just think it's important for everyone to take it. Just be honest. I do think your opinion is valuable, so please, all 7 of us, please take it. So, last on the agenda is, it's that time of year again where we do board officer elections. Tammy came around before the meeting and she gave you 2 little packets, a yellow packet and blue packet. We will do everything by paper, voting, including nominations. And I've asked Anthony to be our vote counter tonight. Thank you so much. So we will just get into it right away. We will start with board president, and if you could write down who you nominate for board president.
The blue ticket, right?
Yes, the blue one.
To nominate.
To nominate. So you just,
You can just tell us, like,
you can just tell us at the end.
who's been nominated.
Mm-hmm.
The only person to be nominated is Brent.
Motion to accept Brent as president.
Is that, do we still have to take a paper vote?
Not if you're the only nominee and everybody likes it.
Unanimous consent.
Thank you, unanimous consent, but either way, unanimous consent or a motion.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Save.
Uh,
I'm going to save.
I think you can, just for sure. Next, take your nominations for vice president and fill that out.
The only person nominated for vice president is Ashley.
Then it's Ashley. Thank you for serving.
Thank you.
Okay, next, we'll take nominations for clerk.
Question, should there be a motion following if there's unanimous consent on the nomination? Should there be a motion
Ashley?
to appoint or to accept the nominee as the president or treasurer?
Maybe we should.
Whatever Mary just said before, the unanimous consent that Ashley gets the.
Mary, do you want to give that motion again? That, what you said?
I don't know what I said. I said motion to approve you as the president, and Larry came up with the better idea, I thought, of unanimous consent, and we were done.
Okay,
Unanimous consent for Bren.
okay, so,
But now we're doing.
I'm not sure we need a motion on that, John.
Well, just a unanimous consent to.
For Ashley.
Accept Ashley as the vice president, so.
Unless Ashley doesn't want the job. That part we're kind of skipping over. We're not allowing her to say no, thank you. You've just been pressed right into it.
thank you for your
I did
service.
say thank you already, so.
Thank you
I
for your
accept.
service. Okay, so now nominate for clerk.
Both Matt and Larry have been nominated for clerk.
Okay.
Do the white one, yeah. So our white ones on this side of the room say nominate, but we'll just use them as
But
voting.
it's for voting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Who won?
I think you can just say who won.
Matt, I had most votes for the position for clerk.
Congratulations, Matt.
Congratulations, Matt. Can I get,
Do we need a motion if we did the vote? Do you know what I mean?
oh, you're right.
Yep.
I don't know.
Sorry,
No, the vote is the vote.
The vote
Yeah.
is the vote, yeah.
the voters vote. Okay. Congratulations, Matt. Thanks for serving. And finally, board treasurer. Fill out your nomination.
There are nominations for Stacy and for Travis.
Okay, and we'll vote now.
Well, it's gonna be in the minutes anyway, so it's fine.
There were 6 votes for Stacy, 1 vote for Travis.
Thank you very much. Congratulations, Stacy. Thank you for your service. Thanks, everyone, for participating in that election. I appreciate that, and for all who are willing to serve. Do we have any citizen comments, Tammy?
We have no citizen comments.
All right, then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you so much, everyone.